Hi, and welcome to Key and Craig's Crazy Craft Corner. Now with 20% more facial hair.
Yes, 20%.
So today's Key and Craig's, we are going to make open-faced silicone molds for resin and other casting.
So one-piece molds.
All right, stay tuned. All right, so for today, our so-called expert, Craig, welcome back, Craig, by the way.
Hey,
you
thanks.
haven't been in a couple of videos, is going to go through the different steps on how to make the mold. We're going to go over the materials you need, and then we're going to go over the process.
Yep.
So I am not flipping off the camera. So if at any point today I had surgery on my finger, I can't bend it, and luckily it's the middle finger.
Luckily?
Well, if you can't bend a finger,
unluckily,
it might as well be the middle
guess.
finger. But I just don't want
This won't be
anybody
good.
watching the video to think that I am secretly flipping everyone off. So I am not secret. If
you-
I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
If you wouldn't have pointed that out, no one probably would have
I
noticed it. But
bet
now
they would.
everybody's going to be watching your finger and not watching the rest of the video.
I bet
So let's go on with what we need. Okay, so what I wanted to do first is tell everybody the materials. Very simple materials. Obviously, if you're making a silicone mold, you need silicone, 2 parts. Now, there are different types of silicone out there. There are platinum-based and tin-based. Price difference, tin is cheaper, platinum is more expensive, but it's more versatile, and it can be used on foods, to mold foods, like for making candies and things like that.
Okay.
When you're pouring the food into it. And then it can also be used for low melt metals, so it can get hot.
Okay.
So that's platinum. I always like is better, more expensive, but that's what we have today. There's multiple brands out there, so just find one that fits your price range, and you're good to go.
Do you just get that on like Amazon?
I got it on Amazon.
Okay.
You can get them at Michael's has them,
Okay.
and most hobby stores will have small kits.
All right.
If you're doing big mold projects, you're going to need gallons, and then
You have
you're
to go
not
to
gonna
like a
find those.
professional shop
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
professional
Okay.
shop.
All right.
But you can get them online too.
Okay.
You're going to need something to stir. So,
Did you eat all those popsicles?
no, I went to the doctor. Lots of times. And
Craig,
I
you
said,
have a problem,
Can I
man."
keep that? No. So some kind of popsicle sticks, tongue depressors, paint stirrers if you're going to do big stuff. A plastic container, because it's mushy. Once the silicone goes off, you can peel it out and use it again. So we're killing the environment with this. We're going to save it by reusing this.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of balanced out.
You can also use those. Can you use those like silicone resin stirring things? 'Cause
Yes.
Same thing. Okay.
Yes. So they make specific bowls and cups for that, and it peels off. They're very flexible.
Yeah, I
You
have
can
some
use
of
that
those.
as well.
Okay.
But if you don't want to put the money out, anything will really work. I mean,
Save your cottage cheese tubs.
yes, this was honey yogurt. Yes, so
now I'm
yummy,
hungry.
yummy. Then you're obviously going to need whatever you're casting.
It's just creepy when you did it.
This could you want? Okay. Me too. We're casting some medallions today. So we're going to be one face, open face, one piece. That's what I was trying to say.
One piece?
One
Yeah.
piece. It's not a peso. One piece because the back has no detail. So we'll be gluing them down. So you'll need something to glue it down to. I've got some plexiglass from old projects because plexiglass is nice and smooth and nothing sticks to it very well, or at least silicone peels off from it very well. You can use foam core. You call it press board.
I call it press board, but
Foam
apparently
core.
it's foam core.
It's foam core. You can use plastics, glass if you really want to, but you have to make a box around it. I would suggest not using cardboard because it's too porous. You could use cardboard for the sidewalls.
Right.
I'd say something a little more stout for your base. Because the sidewalls, it's just keeping the stuff in. You're gonna rip it away and throw it away when you're done.
Okay.
I have Sintra, which is a pressed plastic. They use it in signage, so you can call it signboard as well. So it's very smooth. This is only 1/8 of an inch thick, and because it's plastic, it's somewhat flexible, but sturdy enough to hold its shape. And I'm not going to cut it down any smaller because that would just waste it, and I can reuse it for other things when I make the wall around it. And of course, handy dandy hot glue gun, hot glue sticks for gluing the board together. You want them to be stuck together well, but easy enough to break apart when the mold and the silicone is cured. You just bust that apart and pull it all off.
Okay.
And just a side note, if you're having trouble with the hot glue, you went a little bit too nuts with the hot glue, isopropyl alcohol will help loosen it a little bit. You just kind of dab it on there, sprish it on. That's why I use the resin, or not the resin, the plastic, because then the isopropyl alcohol will get in there and it helps peel the hot glue off.
Okay.
Oh, one last thing, I forgot. It's inside. It's run away. I'll just use this one.
Use that one.
Molding clay or modeling clay. Now you have to be careful to make sure it does not have sulfur in it, because the sulfur will react with the silicone and it will not go off. And this is if you're having to fill any gaps. Underneath one of our medallions, it's got a little raised edge and I don't want that, so I'm going to put a little bit of clay underneath it, and if it is sulfur based, it will not cure.
It'll keep that from curing.
It'll keep the silicone from curing. So wherever it touches it, it'll still stay gooey, and then when you take it apart, you're like, oh, I got this gooey edge.
Okay.
And it'll ruin your mold.
Gooey edges are
gooey
terrible.
edges, yeah, no. Uncured silicone is gross.
I had a lot of those after COVID. Gooey edges.
Gooey. A little too personal. Don't think they really want to know about your gooey edges. But so yes, so clay, just make sure it is compatible, and that's why you get the platinum, because the tin-based really reacts.
Okay, so we will put a list of all of these products.
Gloves if you want them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get your hands dirty.
In our listing, and then I'll also put up some close-up pictures so you can kind of see what they look like close up. So, all right, well then
We're gonna get the hot glue gun plugged in.
Okay.
Glue stuff down, and we'll get some close-up shots of us working with our hands, and so you can just see what we're doing.
Okay.
With a really good detail.
All right.
All right.
Get started on that.
Go. Okay, here we're back, and we're sitting down now, and I'm about ready to glue on the first medallion. As I mentioned earlier, this one has little bumps on the back, and we're never gonna see those, but that will raise it up above my base plate. So I'm gonna glue it down, and I'm gonna take that clay I was mentioning and fill in that gap so the silicone doesn't seep underneath. It's not that big of a deal, but if it seeps underneath all the way, it could encapsulate your part, and then you'll have to go through with a pair of fine scissors and cut it loose. So to avoid hassle later on, I'm gonna do this. And so I did fail to mention that you might need some sculpting tools. They're basic ones, just something that give you a nice clean edge around and clean up the clay. So here we go. We're just gonna glue this down. Load it on, because we do not want it coming loose from our board. Now some of you might be saying, well, why aren't you using better glue? Ow, that's hot. Through the metal. Wow, that heated up the metal really quickly. It should be fine, because we're pouring down this way and I'm sealing off the edges. The silicone won't get underneath and start pushing it up. That's another reason why you want to secure your part to the board really, really good, because if there's a gap and the silicone gets underneath it, it will do a capillary action, kind of like how water gets through any little cracks and crannies. Silicone's the same way. It's thicker, but it will find its way in, and it'll just keep shoving and shoving and shoving until it busts apart loose or just leaks. Another reason why when we do the side walls, you need to make it really nice. So that one's good. I'm not gonna put on the second one just yet, because I wanna put the clay. And so I'm gonna just take some of this clay and shove it in the edges here. And I'll just make my little clay wormies. So it's gonna make the part a little bit thicker, but I'm not too worried about that, because this part is pretty thin. It's a wafer thin. And so I'll clean all this up in a minute. And so we'll be casting them, once the mold is done, we're going to be casting them out of, or at least I'm going to be casting them out of hot or low melt metal. The clay that I mentioned earlier, here's the block again. It is an artist modeling clay, and Key brought up a good question. I didn't mention it. She said, how do you keep it from drying? This clay is a type of clay that never dries. It's oil-based, I believe, and it's for modelers and sculptors, so you don't have to worry about it drying out. You don't want to use clay that's going to dry out, because I might like get this far in the project and then say, oh, I've got to go do something. And then if your clay dries out, then you're messed up, because then it's got all the little cracks and it's going to not give you a good edge, nice smooth edge. So this clay will never dry out. You don't have to worry about that. You don't bake it to cure it. You don't do anything. You just leave it. And that gives you your nice smooth edge, as smooth as you want. You can texture it, like if I wanted to get a little texture stamp, but I'm not going to. I just want a smooth edge. And so you're going to want, yes, don't use a water-based clay. I believe that will react to this silicone. So I've gotten both of the parts attached to my base plate. This is the one that I was working on, and this one I did the same. I did it off camera. I had a little bit of edge work to do because the back was sitting flat, and so I wanted to fill in that little bit of edges. So right now I am going to start using my Centra as my side walls, and I don't have them cut exact because they will overlap like this, so that I can get a nice bead of hot glue down that edge. Because if you go butt ends like this, you're not going to get a good glue edge, and it's better to have that overhang. So I'm going to do that now, that little step, and then we're ready to mix and pour the silicone. Here we go. Okay, so I've got my walls on, and you can see now maybe my explanation didn't make sense, how I overlap the edges so that I get a good seam right here, and then that way you can save these side walls later on if you're using plexiglass or plastic or something a little bit more durable. Foam core is probably going to get destroyed, but sometimes you can get away with using it more than once. But this way I can just peel this off and use it. Now, our next step is going to be measuring how much silicone. There's two ways to do it. Math and the easy way.
No math.
No math. This is simple stuff. So you have to do still a little bit of math, but get some rice and just something to pour it into. Figure out about how much volume or depth you want. You don't need it to be super, super thick. I'm going to show you an example of a mold that's really, really thick. I did not make this one. So this is almost an inch thick. The part in it is about 1/8, 3/16 of an inch thick. You don't need this much. A half of this would have been more than sufficient for this width of a part. Mine are about the same. Mine are about maybe 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go 1/2 inch high up the side walls, maybe 3/4 to be safe. But not much more than that because, one, it's a waste. You don't need it. There's not a lot of detail on these. You don't need it to be super, super thick and strong. If you're doing something with low detail, high details, where you're going to have to bend it and pull it, then yes, you want it a little bit thicker so it doesn't tear and rip when you're pulling the actual cast piece out of the mold. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get some rice. I'm going to pour it in here up to my level. Then I'm going to take the rice, dump it into my little measuring device. And it doesn't have to be graduated like this. It could just be a plastic cup, a solo cup that you use, a red or blue solo cups. Just something clear is easier to see. You mark it off. And then this silicone says it's a 1-to-1 by volume. And that is very important when you're mixing the silicone, to know how you're mixing it, because sometimes it's 2-to-1 by volume, sometimes it's by weight, 60-40. You got to make sure you're paying attention to that. This one, I got lucky, super easy, 1-to-1. So if I have 4 ounces I know I'm going to use, 2 and 2. But we're going to figure that out in just a second. So I marked the inside of my box, which I should have done before I put the fourth wall on, but I forgot that. That's key. She's doing the next process, the next step, with some practice molds that we've already purchased. But I've marked my sidewall and I'm just filling it up with rice so I get a nice even layer, kind of leveling it out so it's as much as I want it to be in there. And yes, there are spaces in between the rice grains that are going to take up space, but because you're doing it by volume and not density, it doesn't matter. And so then, and if you want to add a couple more little bits for security, that's fine, you can do so. All right, and some of the rice grains are stuck in there, staticky. So now I know.
So Craig told me that I can't eat this rice when we're done.
I would not suggest eating the rice. That would be, yeah. Have a container of it off to the side. This rice is kind of like rough. It's really weird.
I think it's basmati.
It's basmati.
I think it's basmati.
So it looks like I've got about
It's fancy.
4 ounces in here. So since it's 1-to-1, if I have 4 ounces total, I'm going to do 2 ounces of part A and 2 ounces of part B. Mix it up really good, dump it in there, and that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so I have poured both my parts A and part B in there. I poured part A first. I believe that's what the instruction says. I've done it so many times I really don't pay attention to that anymore. But you should read the instructions until you've used the same material bunches of times and kind of learn how it reacts. You can put more of the curing agent into the base. It'll cure a little bit faster, but you got to be careful. If you put too much in, it will over cure, it'll heat up, and it'll make your rubber or your mold very brittle, and it'll tear easier. So there's bad things about putting not enough curing agent in. It won't cure, it'll be gooey and sticky, and there's bad things about putting too much. So it's best to stay with what they say. There's an old trick we used to use in the industry as well, that some of the silicones, if you take water, a water spritzer, and you give it a little spritz, it will help it as well. I don't think I've ever did that. Other people did, because we were usually under a time crunch, and if you messed up the mold, then you were however many hours or days behind with the mold that you messed up. And if the part was very delicate and you took the silicone apart, then that part would be all jacked up and you'd have to start over. So I never rushed the process. It's the process. You just got to let it go. Make sure you are scraping the sidewalls very well when you're mixing to get all that stuff off the side. Scrape the bottoms, get it all mixed up really good. They said this one has a 30-minute pot life. That means it'll stay good and pourable for 30 minutes, but you really don't want to walk away, because towards that end of the 30 minutes it'll get very gooey and it won't run into all your details if you're doing a part with a lot of high details. Now,
so Craig, you want to stop for lunch?
yeah, let's go take a break. No, let's not. Some people say you have to degas your silicone and you get a vacuum changer, not with Beano or anything like that,
right.
But putting it in a vacuum chamber and sucking the air out. You don't need to do that. It helps. I have done that in the past on when we had popcorn buckets, full of silicone. It was a big run of silicone, but you have to pay attention, because as it sucks the air out, it makes it rise and it could spill over and mess up your vacuum chamber. Other people say you have to hold it really high and make this really tiny thin stream and it'll pop the bubbles for you. Yes, that's true. Both of those things are true, but not necessarily always necessary. Not necessarily always necessary?
Yeah, that sounded like a Disney song.
Not necessarily always necessary. Yeah, I can see Mary Poppins.
I am totally making that song.
Okay, there you go. So
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. That'll be our theme song.
Not necessarily.
Necessary. What you can do instead is pour into the edge of your mold. Pour from a decent height, but if you're doing it where there's any kind of breeze or air movement, it's gonna flop around. But pour from a decent height into the corner and just let it slowly ooze over your parts, and that movement will also help pop the air bubbles. So I'm gonna just put mine up, and actually I'm gonna pour into this corner and let it run backwards so that it's not running over and spilling over it from high to low. It's gonna go from low to high, and that will let the air bubbles pop themselves. Make sense? Sure. I know you don't pay attention to me most of the time.
I'll just go back and watch the video.
Oh yeah, you can do that. So I poured a little bit in there, and it's already running, and you don't have to go all at once. Do you want to get a close-up of this, Miss Key?
Sure. So that stuff really rises?
It doesn't rise. No, it doesn't. It
doesn't
doesn't.
rise.
It doesn't rise. No, it's the volume it's going to be.
Okay. Doesn't look like enough to fill that.
It doesn't, does it? But that's the magic of silicone. Silicone will stick to itself unless you put mold release or Vaseline between parts. So if you're doing a 2-part mold, then you need to mold release the 2 parts before you pour, or mold release the first part before you do the second part. So if you underestimate is better, unless you're in a time crunch, but underestimating the amount you need is better because you can always pour more on top. Overestimating is just waste, and that's money. And if you're on a budget, you don't want to waste money on a super thick mold like the one I showed you earlier. Okay, we're going to let our silicone dry. We're going to let it cure. About 6 hours is what the manual says. I like to let it last longer. After it's dry, we'll bust apart the walls, and hopefully everything went off. Everything peels out very easily, and then we'll be set to cast our low melt metal in our mold.
So it's been about 6 hours or so since we started this. Obviously, we've changed clothes. I've changed clothes. So we're going to do the unveiling now and see how it worked out. So
The unveiling.
The unveiling.
Oh, here it is. So look, oh, no resins or no silicone, not resin. I keep saying resin. I don't know why. So I'm just going to bust it apart, and because it is only hot glue, it comes apart really easy. Easy-ish. Easy-ish. So there we go.
God, that's terrifying sound.
No, I just don't want to break, because then I can't use them later again.
Yeah, but it's a terrifying sound.
So now, if I just peel it, oh my gosh, look how nicely that peels off of the parts. Oh, I had a little bit of clay. I added a little bit of clay to the top of the little medallion.
Oh, but you
to
did
make
it on
bigger.
purpose.
I did it on purpose to make it bigger. So once I clean that out, this is exactly what I wanted. I don't know how easy it's going to be able to see because it's all blue on blue.
Yeah, I was going to say,
we'll take a close-up shot.
Put in there.
But if I really wanted to and needed to, sometimes the clay and stuff comes up, but I could box it up again and pour another batch on top of it if I wanted to have 2 molds, if I was doing like mass production line. And if you only have 1 to start with, then you make 2. But what I would do is if I was going to do mass production, I'd pour resin in there, make more, and then make a gang mold, which is basically 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, however many you need. So my mold would get bigger, and I would be using more silicone. But if you're going to be doing a lot of them, it's better to do that than pouring 1 and then 1 and then 1. But resin goes off pretty quickly. So if you got a little bit of time, you're not doing a lot, then 1 or 2 molds is good.
It's pretty cool. It's like really hard Jell-O.
yes, it's Jell-O that has got too much gelatin in it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though. That's very exciting.
Yes.
So are you gonna make some?
Not resin. I'm gonna pour the
metal
in these.
And how many times can you do metal in this before it starts to deteriorate? Do you know?
I don't know. I've done some other ones with metal a dozen times, and it seems okay.
Okay.
But what I do is I heat it up first, and I dust it with talcum powder, actually, baby powder.
Okay.
So the metal kind of gets into little crevices, and the baby powder helps protect it from the heat. It's made for heat as well.
Okay.
There are certain ones that will not hold up with heat, but this one supposedly, allegedly, is. We'll find out when I cast it, and if it completely burns, then
well, you'll totally have to let us know.
Yes.
What the experience is with it after you've cast
maybe
a few things.
we can do some comments.
Yeah.
We can put comments in our own comments.
Or maybe if you're in town, we can.
I can
cast it here.
Oh, I could do that, but it's hard to cast because you pretty much have to do it right from the stove right in.
Okay.
So we'd have to be by the stove. There's a stove over there?
There is. I just have to make sure I take all the stuff out of it because I'm using it as a closet storage right now. Because we never use it as a stove.
Closet stove.
Yeah, it's got hidden stuff inside.
Oh, okay. I see a fire hazard, but that's not my concern because I don't live here. So, yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
Once I cast some up, we'll see how it works, and then we can report whether this... But again, that's only for this brand. Would it be kind of, what do you call that? Review of that product, particular brand line.
So, I'm doing a B for Buffy. For a show that I'm going to be doing soon, and so I'm excited to try this. I have to get my bee up to par first because it needs some sanding and stuff, and then I'm going to do that. But for Hellmouth Convention, which is coming up in June or July, something like that, so I'll be making pins out of the resin. So I'll be casting resin.
Yes.
So he did a second one.
I did a second one off camera. For my dad. He likes McRib sandwiches for some reason. I don't know. And so I bought, this is going to be gross. I bought an actual McRib sandwich, and I've kept it frozen for a few months. And then I cast it, so we're going to just take this off so it doesn't get all stinky in my car. And we're going to throw it away. And it is a McRib mold.
It's a thawed McRib.
It's a thawed.
Dude,
still smells like McRib. It still smells like. But so basically, and again, I put clay to cover the gap so it didn't seep underneath. So we'll clean that up. That's easy.
Touching that.
That's easy.
Isn't that
that's gross?
Like some sort of sickening thing, raw meat with clay and.
It's not raw. It's not raw. It's cooked.
I feel like this is going to be the next COVID right here. What you're doing.
They'll trace it back to
trace it back to
Key's house. And
yeah.
Can we say where we live?
Okay. Let's not say where we live.
And the greater Los Angeles area. How about that?
That's much better.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't need people knocking on my door going, "Did you give me McRib?"
McRib vid.
McRib vid. That sounds like something you get from a frog.
It does.
Maybe
there's frog in there. Anyways, so that was my second mold. We'll see how it works. And we're actually going to use this because this is food safe silicone. So you can actually put meat and make a meat press out of it.
There's nothing about that sentence I liked.
It's not for me. So Dad, if you're seeing this before you get this present, act surprised.
When are you giving it to him?
I'll probably send it to him in the mail.
Oh, no, trust me, I'm not going to get this video done before you get that in the mail.
Okay, all right.
Anyways, due to surgery and other issues that I've had over the last 4 or 5 months, I'm really behind on our videos. So hopefully I'll get this out soon, but I still have our Halloween videos from last year to edit and get out. So I'm really far behind. Anyways, I hope that this was a informative video for you. I hope you learned some stuff. Yeah, if not weird. I hope you learned some stuff. We will get back to you on how this does and maybe do a casting video, metal casting video, later on in the year.
And you know what? We can do a meat casting video too.
No, we are not going to do that. Anyways, thank you for joining us. This has been Key and Craig's Crazy
And don't forget
Craft Corner.
Subscribe and smash that like button because everybody says that.
I know, but so why do we need to say it?
So let's say, gently caress that like button.
Oh, that just sounded creepy.
That sounded creepy.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about McRibs. Yeah, I don't think we need to say any of those things.
Okay.
I think you know what to do.
Until next time, we'll see you around. Be crafty.
What is that?
It's our crafty corner.
It's our tagline? Did we just come up with a tagline?
I just came
on
up
the
with
spot?
a tagline. Sure, why not?